Hi, welcome to Coffee Talk Tuesday. I'm Shalise Stevens, and I'm here with my co-host, Trip Mitchell.
You look so different. Last week's show, you just seem different. You seem more alive now.
Last week's show with that emotional clearing and everything, it was good.
That's fantastic.
I know. But it's on the up and up. But you got to keep doing the work.
I had a homework assignment and I didn't get it because I was telling jokes. But anyway, you look wonderful.
Thank you. So do you.
Thank you.
You're so classy.
Well, this is an important show.
It is an important show.
I have a tux at home for next week, if in fact. So
okay, then I'll wear my ball gown.
Oh, you had a picture on Facebook the other day that was very risque.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, because I'm writing my book and I have my book coming out and it's really raw and vulnerable, and actually I've been editing it and getting to those parts of me that are just like the pain parts. It comes out, and so that picture just kind of said it all. That was how I was feeling. Very raw and vulnerable and naked and afraid. But I wasn't naked. I had a cute little dress on. You guys can go check me out on Facebook if you want.
Well, my audience for some of my shows would be on there right now, but you have a much more...
I don't know. I have a very diverse audience.
Really? Who do they... Well, let's get to our guest.
Yes,
and then
this is our guest, Jude Higgins.
Jude, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. So, Jude, what is the fine that you have if you're meeting with someone and they leave their cell phone on? What's the fine that I should pay?
Well, I was a faculty professor at a college, so I would kick you out of class.
Uh-oh.
Go sit on timeout.
I'm turning the phone off.
That's good.
I'm going to bring a dunce hat next time and just like...
Where did you teach at?
I taught at Salt Lake Community College. I've taught at different universities in the area as well.
Really? Which schools?
Oh, I taught at the University of Utah as an
I've heard of
adjunct, and I taught at Utah State.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
You ever teach at BYU?
I did not.
Would you have made the grade there? Would you have been...
Absolutely.
No, I mean, would you be too liberal?
I don't know. I understand that they teach evolution at BYU in the science classes, so I'm not sure.
How can they wait
at BYU?
Wait. How do people running for office in the Republican Party deny evolution?
Okay, that I don't know, but if you want to say anything about death, we can talk about that.
Okay, what do you teach?
I taught anthropology.
Okay.
But right now I'm an end-of-life doula, and I teach people how to hold space for people and families who are dying.
Wow. I know a couple people who do that. And one we call the Angel of Death. And Rita is a larger-than-life figure in this town. So if you go to any Burning Man function. But she is amazing. She does that. And then Angela, a really good family friend, does the same thing. That is the hardest job. What an incredibly difficult job.
Some people would say that.
Well, just people who've had people die.
Right. There's a way to approach it, though, to be present and in the moment. And if we start living our dying every day, it changes how we live our life. So I would say yes, and I would also say no. There are a lot of lessons that we can learn from dying. So we talk about being mindful, and we might be mindful about a lot of things, but we're not very mindful about dying.
You know what's funny is that I was just at a energy convention yesterday, and so a little backstory, I lost my son, which is why I write my book. I write about my journey, and so I deal with a lot of the grief and that as well. And I went to a couple of different people, and they both lost children as well, and they're really great with what they talk about. They talk about, how, the healing process and all these things, and the happy place you can find in grief, moving through grief. And I was sitting there and I was like, the thing with me, because I always ask myself, like, what do I bring to the table? What can I have to offer? Because I go through this journey, and people would say, that I don't know how you do it and all this stuff. But my book that's coming out is actually the hard stuff to deal with, the stuff that people don't always talk about. You don't hear about it when you go to conventions. You don't hear about it when it comes to the pain and the grief. But I reach down, and it's like that dark space in you that's there, and the trauma that happens, and that's what I talk about. And then still being able to recover from that. So it's really interesting, and I actually had no idea what you did. Just so you know, when you
it's a very rigorous booking process to be on this show.
Well, because I had put it out there like, hey, if anyone wants to be on my show, and she contacted me, and I was like, all right. So it's actually though, I mean, she's a death coach. Is that way?
Well, you're successful every time.
Absolutely not. Actually, that's not the case. Right. So it's holding space for clients who recognize that they've gotten either a terminal diagnosis or they're on palliative care. When they recognize they're dying, and talking with them and holding space for them is oftentimes not easy, but simpler than it is when you bring the family in to interact as well, because that's where a lot of the conflict comes from. The family have different notions of what's going on, or the family doesn't want to accept the diagnosis, or the family denies that this is happening.
Is it easier? Is recognizing what's going on easier for religious people?
I don't think so.
Okay.
In my experience, in my personal experience, I don't know that it's really easy for anyone. It's
if
really
you believe in
hard to walk.
If you believe in an afterlife and you're going to someplace better, that theoretically would make it easier.
Well, it depends, I think, on the situation, because I've lost a lot of people in my life too, and I'm not a religious person, but I am very spiritual. And I think that part of it helps me through. However, I also recognize that the energy that surrounds, like, what I need to believe, whether or not it's true, at that point, I mean, and I also recognize I need to believe this, that I'm actually, when I'm working with kids and finding kids and the things that I do, that I'm working with my boy, whether it be his energy or his spirit or his angel or whatever.
But what you're doing is so positive. You're using a horrible situation to try to make life better for other people. Yeah. So that is... But
that's why, I mean, that's cool too, because that's basically what you're doing too. And it's hard when they're in that process of like, we know that we're going to lose them. But the thing is that when you do, one of my closest, dearest, best friends just passed away from lung cancer last year. And I knew it was coming. Like, we celebrated our last year together. And when I lost her, I was not prepared because I was preparing for it. But when that moment happened, I was not ready, because I don't believe that you ever are really ready, because every situation and every person is different.
Right.
And in your situation, when you go talk to these individuals, you find that the individuals sometimes get it more than their families?
Yes.
So they
actually know. And oftentimes they're the ones who contact me for help.
So they're getting pressure from the be it someone who doesn't, let's say, want to continue to have treatment, someone who's kind of said, you know what, I accept the fact that I'm dying, I want to go out.
Or if nothing will help.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So they'll contact me, and then it's how to navigate that space with them and their family. What projects can we do? In terms
By projects, what do you mean?
Well, in terms of what people are really afraid of when they die, all the research that I've read is not necessarily the fear of pain, it's the fear of being forgotten. Oh. And so if we can create legacy projects where families remember their loved ones, then their loved ones feel better, the client feels better as they transition. So I've had a colleague of mine does a lot of grief work, and she was trained as an end-of-life doula. And when her husband was dying, they sat down and they wrote birthday cards to the children for every single year up until they were 40. And in each birthday card, her husband mentioned something that was beautiful or exciting or interesting that happened to him at that year. So he's writing a birthday card for his daughter who will turn 10, and he relays memories of his 10-year-old childhood. So every year the kids will be opening a birthday card from their deceased father until they're 40. That's a legacy project that
Well, and that's
help
really
families.
cool, because then that gives that, I mean, because everybody wants their story to be told or can have their story told, or and those little pieces, it's like, oh, what am I going to find out?
Right. And
That's
there are
really cool.
hundreds of different ways to
Yeah.
tell a story and leave a legacy.
Well, and I've never had kids, so I think that me dying is less. I think if you had kids, dying would be really so much harder. And this sounds inane coming out of, but that being said, I wish we could all check out on our own terms.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of dying from a horrible disease or in a fiery plant. The idea of dying in your sleep
Right.
does not scare me.
Right.
That's like going to bed and just never waking up. But
Right.
dying in a hospital bed, dying in a plane, like those
Right.
poor souls
Absolutely.
in Iran, hit by a missile
Yeah.
and having 90 seconds of sheer terror before you hit that's what scares me, not going away. How do you become a doula?
I went through a training and then I created my own course. So I'm working on a doctorate in education at the U. I've been a faculty member in anthropology. So I understand curriculum design and course design and student learning outcomes. I've also facilitated a bunch of work around communication and ways to communicate, ways to conduct life history interviews. So I've taken all of that knowledge and information after my end-of-life doula course, which was great, but I felt it didn't go deep enough. And then I created my own course. So I've been training end-of-life doulas for about a year.
You get great guests.
Thank you.
I mean, really,
They come to me. I tell you.
you really do get great. I mean, this is really smart.
Well,
I can't even dumb this one up.
well, I mean, if you want to get into like the energy and spirit side of things, I told you there's things that you're going to be. I'm where I'm supposed to be all the time, and I attract the people I need to.
Well, in about an hour and a half, I need to be in Evanston, Wyoming, which is close to hell as there is. We're going to take a short break. You're watching Coffee Talk. We'll see you when we come back.
All right, welcome back. We are with Jude Higgins, and she is a death doula. And we're talking to her about her practice and everything. I have a question for you, actually, that I was thinking about. What is the reaction that most people give you when you say that you're a death doula? Because the word death, people
Right.
don't want to talk about it.
Right. And oftentimes, depending on the context, I have to admit, sometimes I will say death doula and sometimes I'll say end-of-life doula.
What does doula mean?
Doula is a Greek word for helper. It typically has meant woman helper. So it's oftentimes we think of birth doulas as labor coaches. Death doulas are just kind of on the other end. And probably the original death doula is Ram Dass, who just recently transitioned himself.
He died.
Yeah. But so
I got that.
there are
Okay.
lots
Thank
of
you for your interpretation.
Yeah, thank you.
there are lots of people who have kind of taken this practice on. We live in a really death phobic and grief illiterate culture.
There is no question.
That actually was a really cool way to say that.
I stole it from Stephen Jenkinson,
Oh.
who wrote the book Die Wise
But-
and other books. He's brilliant.
But one of the reasons that Kobe Bryant, who passed, we're taping the show on first Sunday in February. Kobe Bryant passed a week ago, and for a lot of people, it caused a lot of grief. And people who are much smarter than me, but not smarter than you, say that a lot of people, it was the first time that they've come to terms with a celebrity dying, and it forces them to think about things that they've never thought about before.
In terms of dying, other people die.
Yeah.
We don't. In general, and in terms of how we sit with our death. So the idea of sitting with dying and being mindful of dying every day of our lives, it should change our lives in some significant way if we really think about it. We tend to think they'll die. I'm not going to. and we go around with that mindset consistently, and it's negative in terms of how it affects the way we live and the way we interact.
That's
So we're changing that.
Well, that being said, as you get on in years, you start coming to terms with those things. And I think before the age of 40, you never even think about it. You go to a funeral, it might be your grandparents.
Right.
When you hit 40 and things start to change, it's no fun at all.
Well, absolutely. I think that's why I've always had a different perspective, because I was 25 and when I lost my little boy. And so my whole adult life, pretty much, because I'm 25 years old, and my whole adult life is, I see it differently than a lot of people.
Right.
So that is obviously the worst thing that anyone could go through. And again, as we mentioned in the first part of the show, you've used your son's passing to try to make as much good as possible. Mm-hmm. Do you look at your life as being different before that day than after?
Well, I've always had that sense of I wanted to help people, and I've always been that person for a lot of people, just helping them through with whatever. However, I don't think it was my purpose like it is now. I mean, it's definitely, that's what I do. That's who I am. And it's not, the tragedy isn't who I am, but what I've gained from that has become who I am. I mean, without losing my son, I wouldn't have a nonprofit. Why would I? There's no, people that have nonprofits don't just do it, usually, if it's like this, because most people have suffered some, pretty powerful tragedies or trauma in their life, and that's what they want to help other people. So I mean, that's how I've always looked at life and overcoming obstacles, is just, making a difference, doing something that's bigger than yourself, because it hurts in here sometimes, a lot of times actually. Mm-hmm. Still, it's been almost 16 years, and listening to the speakers and stuff and talking about grief and death and all that, I don't fear it at all. That's not, I don't have many fears. I fear guns. But that's the way I don't want to die. But I don't have a lot of fears when it comes to that, because I know that what I'm doing right now is that I'm leaving that legacy already. I know what I'm doing, and I'm keeping my little boy, his legacy alive. I write kids books, and that's my little bug, and that's who I'm doing this through. And then my other kids that are with me now, they're my driving force. They're the ones that keep that reminder of,
How old are your kids?
So my son just turned 8, and my daughter will be 12 in March. So, and my boy that passed away would be, he's come, and this October he would be the big 21.
Wow.
So I'm gonna have a big birth. Every year I do something to honor either his passing or his birth, because they're both big days.
Yeah, that's incredible. So doula, you're there to help people get through an amazingly difficult time. How many people will you talk to a week? Is there any set number, or is it just vary?
I take on very few clients myself personally. I train other individuals to work as end-of-life doulas, and teaching is my skill set. So I like to do that. Right now I have only 2 clients, but I usually work with family and friends. I had a woman contact me recently, though. She wanted me to work on her funeral, and she wants a green burial. She wants to be waked in her home. She wants a very non-traditional funeral, so I'm working with her and her family around that.
That would almost be reassuring, knowing that the individual who you're all honoring had a say in all of this. She's
planning everything, every aspect of it. We'll just come in and help the family make it happen, help her make it happen, while the family can sit in that space that's really difficult.
If you had a choice, would you like to know you were going, or have it be a surprise?
That's interesting. We just talked about this the other day. And I just finished a training in January, and I asked that question. And it was a mixed response from individuals in the room. And some people were very adamant that they wanted to know when they were going to go. They wanted to know that date because it would make them live their life differently. And I'm still not sure. In terms of myself, what would I want? Some days I think I would want to know that end date, and other days it doesn't matter to me.
Because in essence, dying in your sleep would be, to me, ideal.
It would. I would love to go that way, actually.
I think everybody would, wouldn't they? Like, I mean, like, how do you want to die? I'd like to. Most people would say, I'd like to go in my sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was being very insightful there. But
your wife might put a pillow over your face tonight.
I'm in a little trouble.
Well, aren't we all? But the grief afterwards for the people who are left, my ex, I still co-parent, and I don't call them stepchildren, I call them ready-mades. So my youngest ready-made just lost a very, very good friend of hers. Immediately, this young girl died in her sleep. 23. Natural causes. So people who are left over in that type of grief, it's very difficult for them. So I don't know. My mom was sick my whole life, near death. When she finally died, it was kind of a shock. And I was also talking about this with the family I'm working with. Is it easier if someone goes for a long time, terminally or on palliative care, or if they go really quickly?
So I actually had this happen to me. It came up. I have another really good friend who her son has leukemia, or had leukemia, and he ended up passing away. And I was saying, I was, heartbroken for her, and I was talking to my husband at the time, but I said, I don't know how I could have done that. And he goes, well, you can't. And it was really profound, actually, because he's like, you can't say that one way is easier than the other because you both lost. You never got to say goodbye. They did. Right. Is it better or worse? Like, right. It's just, and now I work with kids now that are constantly in fear, or not. I mean, they don't live constantly in fear, but anytime they get a cold, anytime that, their heart is this their heart? Is it, whatever? And I don't know if I would know, if I were to know my death day, I would not be living my life any different than I am now, because I'm living my life the way I know I want to, right. Which is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. How does someone get a hold of you?
I have a website that is mydeathdoula.com, lowercase.
How do you spell that?
MYDEATH.
I would have gotten that.
DOULA.
Yeah, I should have said
.com.
Okay. Well, you are fascinating.
Thank you.
But you've caused me to think about some things that aren't very comfortable.
I'm here to help you. Whatever you need.
You've had a really intense day, haven't you, Trip?
You can text me.
God, you are fascinating. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for reaching out and being brave and coming on. I love it.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you.
And we're gonna talk later too.
Okay.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for walking or watching. You might be walking when you're watching.
Towards the TV.
And we'll see you next week.